Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spincast. Wonderful theme music. We have tons of theme music, outro music, all that stuff. I'm Brian Kellison. It's coming. I know it's coming. Or it's just going to be an ongoing joke. Lisa Reese, Brian White, and we have a fourth square on the Hollywood Squares Center Square, Casey Schumm. CS Tri-X in the community. A long time. I'm going to mess your bio up. I don't have your Wikipedia. But
is it CS Tri-X? Is that how you say
CS
that?
CS _Tri-X.
Oh man, I've been saying.
So is that where we're going to start? Where the name came from?
We should start with that. First of all, let's we're going to get into it. But why is Casey on the show? First of all, let's start with that. Why is Casey on the show? Casey's on the show. Why, Casey?
Because I have notes.
He has notes. Fan of the show, everybody. Big fan of the show, but he has notes, so checks and balances are happening. But let's do it. What's the origin of the CS Tri-X?
So the origin was I think I started on Twitch with my normal name and then realized like most people aren't using their real name, so I had to come up with something creative. So it's my initials, obviously, the CS, and then at the time I was big into triathlon, so that's where the tri came from. And then X, Team X was where I started. So that was kind of, nothing magical about it. So, but a lot of people, and Brian gets it right, Kellison, because I think I explained that at one point. So he says the Tri-X, but everyone knows me as CS Tricks, right? Like the tricks are for kids.
I just thought you were like cereal.
I said Tri-X because it's T lowercase r-I and then a capital X, and that's just the way that I see people's handles or whatever. And I'm like, when people do capital and lowercase, I just was like, well, those are two separate things, even though there's no spacing, because I'm Brian Kellison and I capital K, not all one low thing, So there you go. Origin story. All right, Marblehead 9. Why is that? No, I'm just joking. I'm not asking about that. If people know what the 9 is for, then they can come in with their comments. But the 9 is just amazing. But everyone have a good week.
Yeah.
Yes and no. How about that?
All right, let's start with it. Before we get into Casey's thing, I want to know, why did you get DQ'd? Do you even know?
Okay, this is my frustration with it. I get a DQ. Great, fine. Why? Why? Like I still don't know. Still have no idea. Now it's from Casey. And then some of the people that were on the stream at the time trying to figure it out. There was nothing obvious. Nothing. I reached out immediately because I'm not happy. Like angry Brian inside is like wanting to punch little children. And I maintained my anger.
Allegedly.
Yeah. I didn't let it out, but I tell you what, it was pretty intense.
Yeah. Just to interrupt real quick. Can we get the actual what race were you doing?
Yeah.
You got DQ'd.
And then we're gonna go into Casey's story. But I just want to know. Just tell us the thing, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, just a small thing is the virtual hour record on Indie Velo,
which you've been promoting. This is the thing you've been promoting,
and it was my personal target for my rehab. Is 9 weeks to the day of being from my knee replacement. So I'm like, all right, I know I can do 39 kilometers. It's going to be a challenge. I'm going to do this. Like that is my goal.
Your A race, coming back from knee surgery, A race.
So I've been trying the best I can to get to it. Now I've been riding Indie Velo at this time over 9,000 kilometers since last February, 3rd. They have plenty of information. Never once have I seen anything. I'm free riding like crazy on that. I use it as trainer road. It controls my workouts, so I can bounce around the Swift workouts, do whatever. Don't have to think about it. So I get in this race. I got right where I feel comfortable. And 6 to 8 minutes in, boom.
Sorry, buddy. So an hour record is a solo effort on the velodrome in Indie Velo. You've been preparing for this. You've been talking about it. And you're probably the only one that knows about it.
Yeah, rearranged my whole entire day out of my normal being off with the surgery to do this.
And you
My
get
wife, she works from home. She's a travel agent. She had like 5 or 6 things today and a training within, I forget what cruise line, but so she's bouncing around and I'm like, okay, honey, I'm going to go ride for, whatever. And she got to go get the kids. And so it was just really frustrating to get this DQ and then no reason, no idea why.
So, well, you got a prompt, and then you went, and I remember you were talking about it, and then Casey. So Casey is, let me just give a quick little background. I know you did your origin story of your name, but you have been on Zwift or doing virtual cycling for a long time, but your origin story of getting into cycling is, you said 15 years. So why don't you just give us a sort of thing? So Casey, give us a little.
Yeah. So it all started. Yeah.
This is your life.
Yeah. The beginning story started. My daughter, who is 14 right now, my wife was pregnant with her. That's kind of the start of the timeline. I smoked a pack a day. My wife smoked before she got pregnant with our youngest daughter. My wife quit smoking. We came up from the hospital having her. My wife said, you go out that front door and have a cigarette. I'm going with you. And I said, nope, you haven't smoked for 9 months. I'm not doing it. I went and bought my patches at Walgreens, 30 years old. I'm going to quit smoking. And I did. Haven't had a cigarette since. But through that, I gained some weight. I was already out of shape, not a high school athlete, never really performed any athleticism of any sort before my 30th birthday. I think I peaked out that winter, so that was like August, my daughter was born. That winter, I think I peaked somewhere around 210, 215 pounds. And for me, I'm not a big guy. So that was pretty big for me. I was starting to get some uncomfortable, some health things that I think were related to that, aches and pains, nerve problems, some stuff like that. My dad was riding bikes a little bit at the time. So I started riding bikes with my dad. Bought a recumbent bike, like I started on a recumbent bike. How weird is that? Because I was riding with my dad and it was just something we did for fun. I remember the first time I rode, 15 miles was like, that next spring, and I about died. But I just kept riding and growing, found a group ride. I bought a recumbent bike from a guy off of Craigslist who runs local group rides with the cycling club. And he invited me to their Monday night ride. I started going the Monday night ride, and I was the weirdo on a recumbent bike. So, a year later, I went in and bought a regular bike and started riding with them. And then I found the fast group and I started riding with them. And then I did a duathlon, and I'm like, well, a buddy of mine got me into St. Jude run. So I did the St. Jude run. He's like, oh, you're riding a bike now. You can start running. Did 5Ks, did St. Jude, got duathlon. Then duathlon in October got me into triathlon. So I started in triathlon. Then that grew into, I'm really good at TTs from triathlon. A friend of mine won a state jersey in a time trial. I'm like, oh, let's try this racing thing and see if I can get a state championship jersey. So long story short, I've got 4 of those. One of those is over my shoulder right here. Yeah.
Little flex on the camera.
Yeah. So started Zwift 9 years ago. So it was Christmas of 2014 when I got onto Zwift. Worked up through the ranks there. I remember these numbers. My first time on Zwift, with my Stages power meter, that's how I got started in a dumb trainer. I had an FTP of about 290 and I weighed about 160. That's kind of where I started Zwift at back then. And I was already pretty fit from triathlon and that sort of thing. But then worked up into the A+ ranks 5 years ago. I just got an email from a friend a couple days ago. 5 years ago, I was on the Zwift All-Star team. So it's about 5 to 6 years ago was when I went through kind of my peak A+ racing. Did 3 live events through Zwift, the KISS Crit, CVR World Cup, and the Roanoke, Virginia CVR race. So 3 opportunities to get on, third-party trainers, step on a scale in public, prove that I could do it. I got 3rd place in the LA CVR World Cup, had a technical problem in the E-Crit. But through all of that too, I was also heavily involved in the really early days of ZADA, which ZADA started as kind of a play on words of the WADA, right? World
Anti-doping agency.
Anti-doping agency, right? And got involved with that early on when it was a community project. And I kind of pulled out of that about the same time that Zwift started getting involved in that. So it's been quite a few years ago, but probably the first 2 to 3 years of that whole Zada project, probably 2 years, I probably reviewed 50-60% of the athletes that went through that approval process back in those days. That would have been, probably 18, 19.
Was that
maybe.
like a voluntary, like you were volunteering your time to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you were totally a skew of any sort of like, whether it was with Zwift or was with somebody else, you were just like, I'm just a community member volunteering my time to be the verification or the validation sort of part of this.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was exactly that. And honestly, that's kind of why I got out of it, was like, this was sucking up way too much of my time. I believed in it. I thought it was a great thing to do, but it was sucking up so much of my personal time that, like, and I'm sure we'll talk about this. I'm all about keeping it fun. And it was kind of sucking the fun out of it. Cause when you have to go tell a guy, no, I'm not convinced, it's not enough, kind of thing, right? Like that gets stressful for, going and having those conversations. So, but that's kind of like my big story now.
Right, so when you want to keep it fun. So I want to go all the way back to like the beginning. Like you're like, hey, I'm having my last heater and I'm going to start riding my bike because I'm overweight or whatever. What was the thing that was like, hey, why is a bike the thing? Was it because of the father, like you're relating with your father and stuff? Or was it like, hey, this is something easier than running or something like that?
Yeah, it started, I mean, it's always been for me kind of the relationships that come out of it, right? It started with going and doing it with my dad. And, I think, he was doing that intentionally too, right? Like my son, is willing to go do this with me. And I'm not quite the same age he was at that point, but I've got older children now, and I'd be like, yeah, if one of my kids want to ride the bike, I'll go ride a bike every Saturday, right? Like that's the way my dad was. Like we were in communication almost daily about what we were doing that weekend to go for a ride, and that kind of thing. So it started there, and then a good portion of my personal social circle was cycling friends after that, right? Like and I laugh now, even the stream is my virtual group ride. It's not that those people are riding bikes with me, but they are the people I'm having a conversation with while I ride. Right. I didn't ride to race. I rode for social. Like that's what I enjoyed doing.
And that's when you said hey, I got on the group ride. All right, you changed from a recumbent. Then you're like, hey, I want to do. You kind of got the competition bug from the other triathletes or the other state triathlon or the Jersey.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of a competitive bug. Was that also part of going into Zwift, or how did you get into the digital reasoning of going into it?
I'm not really sure what got me going on Zwift. Actually, before Zwift, I was trying to find the name of the program. I got into a program, I think when I got my power meter, I started doing indoor training. I was getting bored with Sufferfest videos on a dumb trainer, and I got a Stages power meter, and I want to say it was a program called like Giro d'Italia or something like that. Like it was a name spun off of one of the big races, and it was a very old Nintendo kind of looking video game on the computer, but it was virtual cycling over, it was a simulated real life terrain kind of thing. And I got into doing that a little bit. And honestly, I don't even remember how Zwift popped up for me, but, I applied to be in their beta program. And it was when I got the Stages power meters, when I really got accepted into that beta program, because I had an adequate device to participate at that point. So like I'm user number 12 or 1500 on Zwift. Like I'm way down there.
Yeah. And so you had the equipment, you just, at the beginning, it was just a power meter. And so you're like, hey, this can connect, I'll get into the thing. And that sort of sparked it. And it became a social thing. When did it become really competitive, when you were doing the CV arcade, the live stuff, or the CVR World Cup stuff? When did it become like that switch I want to turn on and try to do as high competition as possible?
It was really, I'm not the type of guy to stare at a program, a trainer road or something like that and chase a number, but I will chase a guy, right? Like if you're going to go, I'm going to follow and we're going to go. So I almost immediately, when races started popping up on Zwift, I started participating in them. It was like we had, I think it was Facebook user groups or something like that, where we got kind of in touch, and it was like, we're all meeting at the start finish line at 5:30 Eastern time. And Christian Weidman's going to say go, and he's going to keep track of who crosses the line first, and he's going to send everybody an Excel spreadsheet with the results. I mean, we did that for 2 years, I think.
Scott Cunningham talked a little bit about that, where he was doing the original, like, hey, we had to meet up at this place and just race. And then also on the Zwiftcast, I think one of the last episodes where they had somebody come, it was probably a Christian Weidman or somebody was like, we just met up and like there was a place you rode to then do the race, that's sort of the cool grassroots things. Now it's like people complain.
And that's where we started breaking the rules too. Just for the record, that is when the rule breaking started.
Okay, perfect segue.
Because they gave us a world clock website. When this world clock hit 5 o'clock, that's when the race started. And you know what we all did? We started out on a lap early, and we stopped about a quarter mile from the start finish line, and we timed how long it was going to take to go from there to the start finish line. And we hit that start finish line at maximum velocity at the top of the hour and blew past everybody sitting there waiting to start the race.
That's how Zwift racing sprints started.
Right. I mean, that we absolutely did that.
Fantastic.
I love it. Starts.
Yeah, so that's the thing. That's how you shoot like a rocket out of the pen, is because you guys were shooting out of a rocket. You would time it perfectly, and you're also the originator of the. I'm gonna get mad at you now. The pairing screen stops the bike.
Yeah, it's not the pairing screen stops the bike that it really was I was the culprit of. It's you have to stop the bike to change your bike.
Yeah.
Because we were hot swapping. I had a hotkey to swap from a TT bike to a road bike while moving. I could hit one button on the keyboard, be on a TT bike attack. When they caught me, I'd flip back to a road bike, keep going. So, yeah.
Speed runner already. So no, I had a heart rate issue with my bridge. So I had my heart rate in the echelon race yesterday. No, wait, today Sunday? Yes, Saturday.
Yes,
and it was flatlined at like 60 beats per, and I'm like, oh, this is wrong. So I had to hit the brakes, try to get it connected, and it didn't connect, and I was off the back. So Brian, Marblehead number 9, white, you got DQ'd. You were told in the little prompt, because I remember you showed it or something, or I went back and watched your VOD.
Yeah,
it gave you sort of like, it looked like it gave you like 3 options, and then you worked with Casey about trying to figure out what was what. And so what's what?
Yeah, there was nothing right in the moment. It was like, oh yeah, whatever it was. There was nothing glaring. Cadence was there. Power was pretty much steady for the most part. Now, I at the moment, I immediately messaged George on Discord. You're like, what the hell just happened here? I'm angry. Because this event meant something. Like, I wanted to do it, and
you're a very sensible person, by the way. When you get fired up, you're like, oh, this is low key. No, I'm just joking.
I can get irritated. so he got back to me within a few minutes and said I had these. I forget exactly his terminology here. I'll see if I'll get it real quick. But basically, I had flat lines in my power. So I don't know, like, what are you like? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I got nothing. You know what I mean? So it said here, repeating sequential power values, and that was it. Literally, it said this is correct. Whatever. I'm like, okay. I responded with, I just did a 10-mile TT, and same setup, didn't get DQ'd. Here's the power file. Blah, 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 blah. I contacted him again, went through all this stuff. Now, this is after Casey did everything. I've got crickets, nothing. Not even in the Discord was anything. I posted, the Discord got kind of out of control, and I said, hey, I just want to know what's wrong, how I can fix it. I would like to know before I'm in the race what's wrong. Nothing. And I didn't even get a response in the Discord acknowledging me, except for Bjorn said there's repeating values, like George said. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I just tell me what's wrong so I can fix it. Well, Casey, because of his Zada knowledge, was able to like, hey, pinpoint this. I'm not lying to you, and I have it pulled up here, but
Spreadsheet.
I would not have known.
You're going to share screen? No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I can. But
go ahead. You can. I know you can. You want to bring it up?
Yeah. So this is the DQ.
We'll get to Casey's notes, because we do got to get to Casey's notes, because this is. I hope this lays in. I hope this segues into his notes.
Just all right. So this right here. So see where the kicker just kind of like chills right here, and then the power to max, my dual recordings moving around like it's supposed to, and then kind of right here it's flatlining. To me, looking at it, not knowing the ins and out like Casey does, or Bjorn and George, that looks fine to me. Okay, it's kind of moving around a little bit, but it sticks.
Casey, did you see? You can see. Leave that up. Leave that up, please. Leave that up. I am totally. I'm a big dumb animal. I'm like, just go hard and upload the stuff. What is wrong in that, Casey? That I see it. I'm like,
it all circles back to, so the origin of this sniffing that they're doing here is what the target of that rule is, the great sticky watt, right? Like that is what their code is intending to identify. So the way an ANC plus protocol works is ANC plus does not say 300 watts, 300 watts, 300 watts. It says 300 watts plus 2 minus 1 plus 2 minus 1. Every second or every packet that it sends, it tells you whether your power went up or down from the last packet. So it's always communicating. So we're getting real data geeky here. But in theory, if you hold the exact same power for multiple seconds, the protocol would not send a packet because you didn't have a power change. So what the game is doing is the game is saying, when you have a bad reception, when you have, the wife fires up the microwave, whatever, right?
Yeah.
When you start dropping packets, every time there's a dropped packet, it didn't receive a packet, so it assumes there was 0 wattage change. So it's repeating power. So it'll be 301, 301, 301. Until it sees a packet, it's going to keep reporting 301 in the game until it picks up another packet. Or most of the games now have a threshold built into them of 3 or 4 seconds. It doesn't receive a packet within 3 or 4 seconds, it drops to 0, right? Okay. So that's where sticky watts come into play, right? So if I sprint to 650 watts and I stop immediately, my power device stops transmitting power. The last thing it reported was 650 and I stopped. But the game goes 650, 650, 650, 650, 0. So it's that protocol. And to me, the protocol was never intended to do what we're doing with it. But an indication of someone exploiting the protocol is multiple occurrences of repeating power, which Brian absolutely had that condition, right? You can see many times over a short period where it was usually only 2 seconds for Brian. It was usually 323, 323, and then it would change. I actually had it completely drop out in my time trial three times. So, like I had enough where it dropped to 0. Brian never even had enough for it to drop to 0.
So he was losing packets?
Yeah, it was just a reception issue.
So what? It was a reception issue. Okay.
Yeah.
So like, because you're saying that like it's because of its fail safe of either the technology is you send the data and then it goes, I don't have any new data. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
And the reason why it was flagged is after this, we're looking for this sort of flagging thing where it's like, hey, you're not changing, you're not fluctuating as much.
Right.
And it's adding to it. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
What Brian had was exactly what a sticky watt would look like when someone's intentionally trying to do that. The only difference is Brian wasn't peaking here and then dropping down.
Yeah. Like my
He was
cadence
holding
is the
323, 323, 324. It would stick. And so he wasn't getting any benefit from that, but he showed the symptom of what sprint bucking was by having many seconds in a row. And the purest argument to that is you will never produce exactly the same watt 2 seconds in a row more than once or twice in a minute, right? Like we're just not. And when people say my watts bounce all over the place, yeah, that because we can't hold 301 exactly, right? Like that's not how we're built. So that's what got him flagged. And you know, my response to a lot of I got a little bit involved in the Discord. I tried to keep it pretty low key.
Keep it fun.
Yeah, keep it fun. But to me, the key is they were looking for the right things, but they stopped one step short of the disqualification should be once you recognize the pattern, you also have to see where they benefited from it. In general, poor reception, which is really what Brian was suffering from, was poor reception. It's a detriment to the rider. It's not a benefit.
No, right.
But the symptom could be exploiting the sticky watts, and that's what they're targeting. So they need to take that rule one step further to say, we're going to DQ you if you're also gaining power. And there's
another point of criteria, which is advantage. And that's essentially a judgment call.
No. I'm a data geek. There's other elements in the packets that you can prove an advantage from it, a significant advantage. So, and this is more data geek stuff, but every packet also includes like a total work. So like just do simple units of work, right? For every packet that you send is 10 units of work if you stay at 300 watts. So if we lost packets for 3 seconds and you come back in and your total work has increased by 30, we lost 3 seconds of packets. You've still done that work. It just didn't get reported. It got lost. But if they came back in after the 3 seconds with only 5 units of work, it'd be like, oh, the power device actually didn't see power that I reported across there. Like you can reconcile the power pretty immediately once you get the packets back to say, I mean, you can't ding them if you gained 5 watts, I don't care. But if you gained 650 watts for 4 seconds, you do that 2 or 3 times, you gotta flag them. And there's ways to do that in the data.
Yeah, and my biggest problem is if it wasn't for Casey, I would still not have an answer of what I was doing, why I got DQ'd. I still wouldn't, because they told me that, but I didn't understand it at the moment. If it wasn't for Casey, I'd have no idea.
So I would
still have no idea.
All right. Well, hopefully hopefully you get some clarity other than an expert like Casey. I have a question now about, does Bluetooth and Direct Connect have the same issue?
Bluetooth and Direct Connect will typically not produce the reception issues to trigger a DQ like this. It's going to be much rarer to have those. I don't know how the Direct Connect works specifically, but I assume that it's going to be similar to Bluetooth. It's a handshake connection. There's a little more back and forth in those communication protocols. And that was kind of one of my points to Indie Velo and all of this too, was like, give us some tips, right? One simple tip is use Bluetooth over ANC Plus because you're less likely to have this occur.
Can you send all 3 to Indie Velo for one power meter?
Direct Connect uses the Bluetooth protocol within the program.
Okay.
So if you're actually connected via Direct Connect, it's taken up the Bluetooth spot.
Oh.
You can't connect Bluetooth and Direct Connect.
I didn't know that.
Okay. Another question before we get to the notes. Hold on. You got something, Brian? Go.
No,
You're just angry. Go ahead.
It's just as someone in my position who's been on Indie Velo and riding a lot, to not have a specific, hey, this is the reason, or a heads up prior. That's my biggest takeaway. That's fine. I got flagged because I can see it now that I know what to look for. There's a problem with the Amp Plus, but not knowing it, just the flat, hey, your setup's wrong or whatever, and then no specific clear answer, and no saying, hey, and maybe when they're in there looking and they just haven't figured out to respond to me yet. I don't know, but I'm just saying that was on Wednesday.
That's the hope. I think that's the hope is like, hey, we need more time to figure this out or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like I think you're right, where your prompt when you were DQ'd or removed from the event is vague. It gave you like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, instead of being like specifically you are being DQ'd because of this. And that's, I think, where Casey says it should be another what is it, requirement from the verification side to go, hey, this is you've met this requirement of dropping packets and you haven't replicated, and then it seems like you're gaining an advantage. That's why you've been DQ'd. And then it's up to you to kind of defend that, if that is something you want to defend or whatever.
Now they made a hot fix. I did another DQ event, the same exact thing on the velodrome with a higher wattage in the end of the day, and I didn't get DQ'd. So my specific example of getting DQ'd, they fixed it. Now, today I saw where some people in chat, George and a couple other guys, were discussing it. So they're still, I don't know the case, but they're still having issues. Or maybe not issues, but there still needs to be that clear, hey, this is going on issue. But my specific problem with the drop packets has seemed to be the Iron Fist is loosened a little bit, which is fine. But I want to know how to fix it. And Bluetooth may be the answer. Bluetooth might be.
Yeah, I think that my takeaway from all of that was everyone who got kind of DQ'd through that cycle, that first storm that happened midweek, was they all got DQ'd from a meaningful event for them. And that I think was what stung. I don't think anybody was arguing that the criteria, once they understood it, that it was a problem, as much as, like Brian was saying, how many thousands of kilometers he had on Indy Velo. It's somehow knowing before you're in, some of the other people were in the stage 7 of a 10-day stage race and they got DQ'd while they were coasting downhill, right? Yeah. Brian, I think, was the only one that I heard that was specifically DQ'd for his reason. And I think his reason was a lot more DQing decent stuff than the others. The others were probably DQ events that need to stay as DQ events, but people need to find out before they're in a big race that they have those problems.
Yeah, like even just in the pin, like a pin process that you could do, or the warm up or something. I don't know.
I raced the DQ event after Brian on Amp Plus. My data actually looks worse than his as far as repeating values, and I didn't get DQ'd, but that was after the hotfix. So I do think they took a big step to not have what happened to Brian happen again. But I think the hard part is the way it's set up right now. You only know that you're going to get DQ'd if you're in a DQ event. Like when you're free riding and you trip that flag, it doesn't tell you.
Yeah. All right, Brian, you can lose the screen share. And sorry, anyone have anything more? Because I want to make a joke.
I was just going to say, because it was a legitimate world record attempt.
Yeah.
What was Brian was going for, and people got DQ'd. Like
I had six in my event, and 3 got DQ'd. And the guy that said it, Rich Akers, and did like just over 42 kilometers. So in that event, it would have been me and this guy battling it out. Most likely he would have taken it because he increased his pace as he went, because I was ahead of him when I got DQ'd. So kudos to Rich. But
all right, here's the joke.
I'm coming for you.
Lee, you need to step up your what is it? DQ game. I've been DQ'd, or watt per kiloed. Brian now. Casey, you probably have. Lee?
Nothing. I tried my best this morning.
Yeah.
I just didn't have it against all you like pros.
You're low on controversy. You need to step this game. This show is all about controversy. So, all right.
I have actually one comment is I freaking love that Casey's first bike was a recumbent. Like at 30, he started 30 years too soon on a recumbent.
Yeah,
I did.
It's amazing. Like, I love it because you don't see many recumbents.
Casey had the recumbent on the kicker.
I did.
That's even crazier.
Well,
Yeah.
I actually I had another recumbent come through my stable over the last year. I've gotten rid of it again, but my first 20-mile-an-hour average bike ride outside, 20 mile an hour for an hour, was on a recumbent.
Nice.
I just think, like, it
That's
just,
phenomenal.
you know, when you're like, I'm going to ride a bike, I'm going to get a bike and start being healthy. Whoa, what are these things? Look at this laid down bike. Let's get me one of those.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's
All right.
awesome.
Casey is on the show because of his notes. The floor is yours, Casey.
Okay, I'm gonna start with picking on BK.
Bring it on.
And this comes back to yesterday. Dude, don't make it so hard. If your device will connect to the game, connect your device to the game. Don't connect your device to device B, to device C, to device D, and then go to the bathroom and they all disconnect and like just connect it to the game.
I have a good excuse for that.
Triple power recording.
I'm working on some back end stuff. It's because I've been having some resistance things, and that's why I didn't have my Ant Plus. Usually I just use an Ant Plus thing, but yes, walk away, don't connect it. And now the frustrating thing is obviously you guys know RGT, you can connect things. I've had the no connection and have to chase back.
Yeah.
But the Ant Plus only to the bridge to turn it to Bluetooth to connect to Bluetooth. That's the only one thing. So you're right. Don't walk away. Connect everything, and then I just forgot. So you learn.
Yeah, and I kicked that off kind of purposely picking on you a little bit on that. But one of my biggest common themes when you guys were talking about is it serious and racing and all of that stuff, it's all about we have to make it simpler, right?
Yes.
If I can click into the game, and Indie Velo is a good example of this. If I can just click into the game and there's an extra option to pair my power meter, I'm going to pair my power meter and get the dual recording in the game, right? In Zwift right now, you wouldn't even have to put an extra pairing box into the game to dual record. You already are pairing your resistance trainer in there. Just pick up power from the resistance trainer and pair the power meter. I mean, that's what Indie Velo is doing. So, and that takes me back to your eNats thing, Brian, where it was like, I had all of these things to do and I forgot to change my weight, right? It's like, eliminate, you may not be able to eliminate the weigh-in videos and changing your weight and doing that, but you're also trying to, I need to get my head unit and I need to make sure I got the right ANC plus number in this head unit and it's not pairing to my controllable trainer. And if I were to go to one of my friends and say, one of my outdoor racing friends who's indoor averse, and say, you need to race this cool race on Zwift, but you need to dual record, he'd be like, what the hell's dual record? Like, what how do I do that? There's no, like, that just needs to be easier. And that's across the board, right? We make things too hard. And for these race entries, it's always about keeping it simpler. If you can pair dual to the game, you've accomplished, and I use dual as an example, but this is true in a lot of things. As soon as the game's able to do it, you're also able to filter event entry based on it. You know, it's only been 18 months that you've been able to filter events on, you have to have a heart rate, you have to have a smart trainer, you have to have a power device. Those races are better in Zwift.
Agreed.
So if you have to have dual recording, you can make that a flag on an event, right? And that's, people will still cheat, but that's one more barrier that the average typical issue person isn't going to do, right? I mean, you got to be a little more intentional about it. So that was kind of one of my general topics, is just, you know, kind of the rants about all of that. And then you guys were talking a lot about strategy stuff. Power-ups need to be more powerful. You guys talked a lot about bike choices, make the bikes be more meaningful. Doing things where I think Lee had the quote of everyone can win, right? Depending on if you had the right bike, if you got the right power-up. The most fun part for me is I've always been fortunate enough to be good enough at the game and to be at the right level in most of the categories, that a majority of the races I entered, I had a legitimate shot to win. If I was always joining to finish in the last third, I wouldn't race. It it wouldn't be fun. So things that give more people more opportunities to win, I think is a good thing. And everybody wants it to be like outside, right? Outside racing, simulation. I want it to be real. I know, Brian, that's a big topic for you, Brian Kellison. You know, what it takes to win outside. I think about that in my TT days, right? Like I can't outpower a lot of guys, but I would still destroy them on a TT bike because I was better at my position. I was better at my setup. And it wasn't because I spent more money on it. It's because I learned how to be in that position, and I learned how to apply my power and how to, you know, flatten out the road, ride the hills. In a road race, people learn how to hide in the peloton all day long, those types of things. All of that stuff is not skills that translate to Zwift, right? If I don't go to a TT on Zwift, it's a power competition. That's all it is, right? Yeah. So how can we incorporate those learned, skillful things into Zwift to make it like outside, but it's not going to be outside? And that's where I think that experience comes in, right? And, you know, it's experience in earning better bikes, learning how to use the power-ups that are more powerful. So that's where I think you're never going to have a simulation unless you're actually scanning the person's position on a bike and how aero are they,
right.
And, you know, that kind of thing.
I think there's we were talking about this offline before we started the show, was about the I enjoy simulation, and a lot of people hear me like, what do you care about? What's this? I care about simulation because I enjoy simulation, but I also enjoy video games. And I am in total agreement with you, Lee. I think we've talked about this, is if you're going to make a power up, make it a powerful power up, you know, make it the bike or crafting or something like that. The reason why I got frustrated with it, and I talked about this offline, is Zwift is not good at making it a gamified sort of thing. You can have a serious simulation version because there's like the World Championships where it's like all the bikes are neutral, or there's no sort of gain of advantage. There's no power ups. It's just race. It's just power to see what's up. But you can move within the game to see like, hey, conserve in the back, or maybe I need to be in the middle. Those are little things, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're going to make it like, hey, let's do a game with the whatever, the repack ridge sort of like speeds, or the crit, because a lot of people are saying the crit is fun, but repack ridge isn't fun. And I'm for that. Like, I get it. Turtle shells and banana peels and all that stuff. When I was doing the Canada race today, I got different power-ups, and I was having to strategize where I was going to use it because I knew they were going to come up later, or if I had an arrow, or if I had a feather. That's part of it while you're at effort. And I think we can push it even further, but have races that are unserious or casual, that we push the limits. I wish they would push it even further, and they don't.
Well, that's, I think, where I came from with what Casey was just saying, and how it came up was there's learned things. Like every video game in the world, you have to put hours into it. And it came actually because Marble had 1.3 million XP. And we were like, what the heck does he get with his 1.3 million XP? Nothing. He gets the same bike everyone else gets. And so, and the problem is you were having world championships with guys who had 4 races in Zwift Power winning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why should that guy win? There's no differentiation between like a super powerful outside guy and like a powerful esport guy. And to make esports different than outside, it has to have that separation. So, I mean, if I've been grinding in the game since 2016, you know, maybe I should have a kick-ass bike. I'm still not going to beat the pros, but it might make them think, oh, geez, I should probably grind to get a bike. If I want to win the world championships in esports, I should probably, you know, they'd have to specialize. Well, I guess I'm not going to the Tour de France this year because I got to grind and get this damn bike. You know, there should be some benefit. And I mean, I'm not going to win, but 30-second difference between the slowest and fastest bike is not enough. It needs to be like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if we talked about this, but it's sort of like this. We have racing or competitions that are clearly identified as, hey, you can use your skill, you can use your drops or your XP to buy skills to be more aero or to do whatever it is. And then it's the other, like, you go back to who you were. Like, you have 2 different profiles, and you have the super game fun stuff where you're like, hey, that's like for me, it's like Diablo. When you like, hey, I'm going to go down the frozen or the ice skill tree instead of the fire or the lightning. You've just decided to use to spend your XP that way, and you're going to be that racer, and you can do the things that you need to do. That's maybe the next phase if that's what people want. I love simulation. Like, hey, I want to see where my genetics are and where my training are at a Masters racers, but then I also like the game stuff.
Like mix and match gear, like with Marble with his quest for every kit. Maybe there's a kit that's got plus 20 to hill climbing, and it's a super rare.
I would be into that.
You got to wake up at 2 a.m. So you're like, man, look at this race course. This course has mostly hills. Okay, so I want the plus hill climbing socks, the plus hill climbing jersey, and maybe because Brian woke up at 1 a.m, he's only one of 20 people that has like the super epic legendary plus 20 jersey. Well, that gets him an advantage. Like, but it's not like that's what. But the thing is, from a gamer standpoint, every game is like that. I understand if I go into a brand new game, like a multiplayer game, that I'm not going to be the best because I just got into it. And I think Zwift feels like gamers just don't understand. It's like, no, man, we all understand that if you start from level 1, you're not going to be good.
Go, Brian.
And that whole topic, I think, is why we went from level 60 at 750,000 down to 591, because and I was kind of tired. I hadn't eaten in forever. So like last night, I did a 2.5 hour fasted ride. I was doing effort, and after the fact, well, I was making fun of people for riding slow because I wanted to test that stupid draft. Okay, but that is, and I said that in the moment. I remember that's the majority of Zwifters. They could care less. They just want the Tron bike or whatever. And Zwift made it easier because I'll make up the number. 75% of the user base is the guy going 100 watts in the desert, could care less about racing. And just like my friend, he's all he wants to do is get on, do his 2 hours, do his workout, whatever. And that's why we got those levels reduced. And I almost don't know if Zwift will ever go to that true gaming that we want.
Is that could that be a way to get people more interested in things?
Personally, I would love to have, say, Wednesday and Friday nights, like,
that's cool.
Maybe the whole day be like, dude, this is like all your unlocked magic super bike kit stuff. So people will be driving. Yeah. So like there's 2 days of the week that Zwift is just like the video game.
Or
and then the other 5 days,
one guest where like McCurry is just like, it's like Akira, and like it's just like everyone's got laser beams shooting out of North Star. Yeah, Fist of North Star, stuff like that.
To me, that would be cool, and the sense of achievement of getting to level 100 or whatever it is. But now, why do we have so many drops? Please, Jesus, if Zwift ever hears this, let's get a reason for drops. They're pointless. And
I said we should use drops to make verification checks. You could spend your drops for verification checks.
Yeah.
That would be the reason why
replacing tires and chains. That'd be cool. That'd be like a bicycle shop aspect to it.
Let me spend 500,000 drops to increase my frequency or my probability of getting an arrow by 10%.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I mean, like, it's not a guarantee, but like it just bumps my percentage, right? It favors it a little bit.
See,
there's entering the race.
There's game mechanic stuff. Yeah. Any more notes, Casey? Oh, sorry. Go, Brian.
Oh, no. I was just saying, just like Casey said, you could spend your 5, whatever it is, whatever he said, I'm going to have a better chance to get this draft or this arrow going into the game. You may not get it, but that gives your drops a purpose.
See, I'm cool with like using the drops for advantages, but I know that that's that line of casual versus competitive where it's like pay to play, even though it's in-game currency. Like, hey, I've spent a lot of time, and you're like, you're paying this advantage or whatever, instead of just, hey, it's cosmetic and it doesn't mean anything, right?
And just riding with Maria, when I was only doing 5, 6, 7 hours there for a while, I got like 1.2 million drops in about 2 weeks' time. So if you're riding with a pace partner for an hour, you can rack up a huge amount just riding with a pace partner. So those new riders that are going to say, well, I don't have them. if you put the time in with a pace partner, which is an easy way to get them, you know, that's part of the game. So I guess that's just my view from a gaming aspect. Like we've all said, we do want more of it. And then we got Indie Velo and My Whoosh that is say if like the serious racer, or if I want to do like a more serious, just straightforward race, those are options. And if Zwift have both options, you know, you got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I think any platform can offer both sides of that, right? I mean, there's no reason that you can't put all those things in, but say, okay, you know, this race series at Tuesday at noon is going to be neutralized from a XP perks perspective and a bike choice perspective, right? Everybody, you can visually be on different bikes to show off that I've earned this one or that one, but you know, everyone's physics is going to be the same. Everyone's, you know, there's going to be no power ups, and all of those skill perks are neutralized, right? But then you're going to have other games that are arcade setting, right, where I might have a bike that will take me up that hill a minute and a half faster, but it might be slow as molasses on the flats, right? And it creates that, you know, make a bike choice mean something based on the course kind of thing, you know, like those types of things.
It super annoyed me when they took away the CDA on, because I used to love that in events, going on the jungle, jumping on a mountain bike and crushing people. And then they're like, no, we're going to make it more even now.
Yeah, there's no reason to get different bike. Like I use like 3 bikes. That's it. There's no courses that any bike is an advantage when you get to a certain point in speed. So
yeah.
Back to my notes, Brian. I think I'd say my final note. This is kind of summing up everything. We laugh on my stream, right? What's the F words? The F words are fun, right? Like it's just got to come back to fun, and that's kind of where I started, right? This is fun for me. It's a part of my life. This isn't like, you know, what's your next event? I don't have another event. I don't have anything on the calendar. I'm not paying to enter anything. This is fun. And as soon as it's not fun is when I kind of have to pull back and say, I got to get out of this piece or that part of it because it's destroying the fun. And I think it's getting a lot of people to realize, you know, through all of these conversations and things with Indie Velo, when you start striking that chord of DQs and things like that, right? You're starting to take the fun away from some of your user base by maybe misdiagnosing a DQ or them, you know, they get frustrated. So part of it is the user base has to have some tolerance for that. You got to get some thick skin when it comes to that and realize it is just for fun, but also realize for me, and this is where it kind of gets serious, is this is a mental health game for a lot of people, right? Like you take my cycling away and I have to have another mental health outlet, right? Like this is a mental health outlet for me. This makes me a better husband, a better father. It allows me to deal with stresses in my life, that sort of thing. So I have to continually reset myself, right? And you know, being on here, that's one of the things when it goes back to when we start getting that frustration, right? Like we get passionate about this, we get frustrated about it. But I think a lot of the reason a lot of us get frustrated about it is because we want it to be fun. Right. And some of these circumstances come up to tear that away. And sometimes you just got to get back to letting it be fun.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I know that it's fun. I get frustrated so my thing that makes it not fun is complacency. And so when I want more fun and things that I think can improve to make my fun even more fun, that's when I get so frustrated.
Tons of fun. Yeah. I have fun all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I just really like to rant. And at the same time, Zwift has done more for cycling for me and fitness than anything else has. And I loved Zwift. And the ranting kind of comes from a place of, Zwift, I know you can do better.
Yeah, it's like, you can be better.
You can be better. And I know you can be. It's like dealing with your kids where you're like, I know you can do better. And so for
disappointment. Yeah.
It's just sort of like, man, like I know this game could be so awesome, but they continually step on their own feet and break stuff and we just go, what the heck are you doing? Like, I know you can get there.
It's funny because I almost came on to your guys' show today with I've got a Zwift t-shirt. I almost put it on, and I've got a Zwift, what is it, a musette bag or whatever, like a feed bag, right? I've got those memorabilia that are Zwift branded. I almost put it all on, like I'm going to come on here as the Zwift fanboy. But the reality of it is I got into this, and I probably would have let it go had it not been for Zwift, right? Like I don't ride outside at all anymore. I'm not involved in triathlon anymore. I am only involved in this room in my basement doing this. And as frustrated as I am with Zwift, that Zwift is really the core of what got it started and got me to this point. So I'm with Lee. Like I know they can be better, and I get so disappointed, I guess, in why are we still fighting this battle 9 years later?
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of it, like they've done some really good things. They've probably had their best year ever. Like Zwift is still doing Zwifty things, but not near to the extent that they were years ago. So maybe they'll keep going that way.
And I think that's why we get frustrated, or at least my point of view is we like Zwift, we want it to get better, and it's just it's not going at the speed or the things that I guess we may be the small group that doesn't really have as the impact as like the masses, but we are the guys that have been here and keep coming back regardless. And I think that's the point of view I have. It's like, I want you to do better because I like you so much.
So I recognized something watching BK stream yesterday or the day before. We were having the whole debate about RGT and what was real and what was not when they went away and all of that.
Oh,
I had this realization. Yeah, I had this realization though, is we all as a community fall in love with the applications that are being developed by the person who's passionate, who's doesn't appear to be there to make money, but they want to make a better product, right? Like I'm just going to take this on. This is my passion project. I'm going to invest my own time and my own effort into it. When you give them feedback, they're loving the feedback. They make the change overnight, all that sort of thing. And as soon as you start getting the, and RGT is an example of it. This was my observation. It was like, RGT was that way, and then Wahoo got involved, and it became business decisions and not passion decisions. And that's where it kind of got stale, right? And that ended up going away. Well, Zwift is the only one right now in this space that seems to be business decisions and not passion decisions, right? We love Indie Velo because the developers are passionate about it, and it doesn't seem to be about a money thing. It seems to be about what they want, like they're striving for this product. Money's not an issue for my whoosh, so they could care less about the business decisions, right? Like that's, if you know the background there, go look it up. Like they're not in it for the money. So
I could care less about the draft too.
But I think maybe that's something to it, right? Like I think that's why we feel that way about Zwift, and I noticed that about RGT. Like that's when those things change, right? Is when the people writing the code are passionate about it. That's their pet project, right? They believe the same thing we do. It's when they have to bounce that off of shareholders and money, and Zwift needs to do what Zwift needs to do to get more people on the platform, not to keep us here, because retention of membership, I don't think is a big thing for Zwift. I hate to say that, but there's not a lot of competition that they're worried about losing us to.
Yeah, I think it's secondary to new subscribers, new people, new adoption.
Because in reality, if you want to race, there's basically 3 platforms. Indie Velo, MyWhoosh, and Zwift is by far the largest. Indie Velo has a great foundation, and I think Indie Velo will develop into something very reliable when it comes to the racing aspect.
And their mission statement is racing first.
Right.
Like
exactly. And that's the other thing right now with Indie Velo and the DQ and all this big, uproar.
Controversy.
We are riding the wave to get to that spot where it's perfect. And it'll never be perfect, but it'll be so ironed out that you won't even realize it. All the bad apples will be kicked out. All the non-human efforts will be gone. Like I saw today on Facebook, someone went around the Beach Island Loop at 14 watts per kilogram, did the whole thing in like 8 minutes. He's got the KOM on Strava. Like those are the things that Zwift is kind of like, it's frustrating. If I'm doing the Hilly Loop KOM and I do my best effort and then some Z Power guys 2, 3, 5 minutes quicker, it's like, come on, man, that's not, so those are the kind of things that, need eliminated.
Well, and like, it sucked that you got DQ'd, but at the same time, you can see the direction they're going and you're like, wow, that's pretty awesome. And so like the situation super sucked because it was like, say, a legitimate world record attempt. But their systems that they're putting in place, you can see the end goal and you appreciate the direction they're going, even if there's going to be a few, bumps in the road. You're going, wow, when they nail this, it is going to be awesome. I'd love to be in a Zwift race and just have half the people disappear. Like you're on like lap 2 of Dolphin Crit, and all of a sudden it's like people disappeared. What the
Speaking
heck
of disappearing, the Canada versus the world today.
Oh yeah,
everyone disappeared.
Everyone disappeared.
Not me.
That goes back into my argument. Swift
One
power
of those is in chat right now.
Yeah, anybody in chat want to chime in? Hey, Mr. Filtered, welcome to being filtered.
And that's the same thing with Kellison. The Echelon Racing League, the first one he got, because he went over the Zwift power settings of it, not the current Zwift category enforcement. So that box within Zwift power wasn't checked to like, hey,
are you rubbing it in, Brian? You rubbing it in?
Well, I'm just offering what happened. Scott may not know what happened.
Yeah, I got watt per kilo from Zwift, so mine is more.
Well, we've seen 4.6 in ZRL, and it's okay. So hey,
yes, so that's the sort of that goes into the what is what, right? But I'm with Lee, and I think we all are on the future is brighter with what IndyVelo is doing, and if they partnered with Zwift and doing these sort of things. The end goal is to make it, hey, it's more real time. Hey, you're having an issue, so it doesn't totally ruin the event afterwards. So it's like the finishing race, like I got 6th today, and then I look at Zwift Power, and it's like I got 2nd. Great. No, I got 6th. Why am I 2nd? And I was frustrated in that sense.
Went from 40th to 32nd.
Yeah, Scott's commenting that they did say in the Discord they'll fix the results. Yeah. For those that don't know what we're talking about, the Canadian versus the world event today was really age group based.
Casual
groups.
Events.
Yeah, A, B, C, D, E. You joined a pin based on your age. Well, I think the way Zwift Power works is when races come in there, unless the organizer intentionally goes in and change things, they just kind of get loaded up with default settings. So those settings in Zwift Power were the old power-based categories where they were asking people to enter those starting pins based on age. So, Scott is an example of he fit the age category to join the B category, but right now the B category is being filtered based on B power, which Scott isn't. So he got DQ'd, tentatively. Somebody's got to go flip a switch that has the right authority.
Does anyone know here? Maybe Casey knows more than we do, but is that somebody at Zwift, or is that somebody who's like Echelon or Canada, Cycling Canada?
It could be both. So for those that don't know, Zwift Power is run by Zwift now. So, ultimately it's Zwift's platform. They've taken it over many years ago from those who started it, but organizers of races also have administrative access to their own races on Zwift Power. So what I don't
on Zwift.
Not on Zwift, but on Zwift Power. You can't modify a Zwift result.
No, but you can modify auto category. Can't you set up like, hey, this is an auto category only event?
I think all events are set up by Zwift though. Like if you're an organizer and you want a Zwift event, you have to submit like a form, and then a Zwift employee translates that into the game. And that's why you see a lot of these like setup issues too. It'll be like, well, that's not what I asked for my event to be, but when it started running, it was off, right? Like
the time trial into a scratch race.
Right, exactly. Right. Draft was supposed to be off. The Zwift employee that got the Excel form missed the part that they checked box C2. And yeah. So it gets confusing. The sooner Zwift can get those together, the better off they're going to be.
And that brings it back to you were talking earlier about easy.
Yeah.
It needs to be easier for these organizers. Like there shouldn't be multiple box checking in different locations. Should just be Zwift.com. Here's my event. Check, done.
Even the DQ stuff, like Brian's talking about, right? Like, I think it's great that, it seems like Zwift and Indy Velo are getting this relationship as far as race compliance goes, right? The Indy Velo people are participating in the administration of the high level elite races, right? They're reviewing that. They're working with Zada, but a lot of this is just bad habits. There was a recent disqualification in one of the national events where you question, like, did the person know they were doing something they shouldn't be doing, or did they just figure out that it was an advantage and they used it, and they were never scrutinized until they were in a big platform with a camera on them to realize that they were doing something wrong, very similar to what Brian just went through on Indy Velo, right? The filter wasn't placed on you until you got into a big event, and now all of a sudden, like, these people that are creating whatever they want to call it, the bad habits, doing something wrong. If you think about scolding your children or your pet or something like that, right? Like, if you correct your dog every time they do something wrong, they'll learn really quick, like, oh, I can't do that. But if you let them do it 200 times when they're free riding, and then you put them into a race and say you can't do that, it's like taking my son out, and like, oh, we're going to learn how to race go-karts, right? We're going to go practice for 200 laps with nitrous on the go-kart. And when we get into a race, I'm going to keep the button on there, but you're not allowed to push it. Right. That's where it comes with this, like the unapproved pedaling styles and things like that, right? Like, you need to make these people aware. You need to make it easy. Anytime they're riding and they're breaking those protocols or those things that seem suspect, you need to make them aware. They're, Z power, all of those things, right? Like, hey, are you, and they used to have those warnings. I don't know if they do anymore, where you get the cone. If you paired like Z power, and it would pop up and, like, unless you're, a Tour of France rider, which you wouldn't be riding Z power anyway, right? Like, you need to fix your stuff.
See, that relates right into the, do you have the audio clips ready to go? So this is, let me set this up. This is audio from an interview with Martin Carew on episode 34 of the Virtual Velo podcast. And they were on talking about WTRL and all that other stuff related to.
Is that Martin Carew, the WTRL
guy? Yeah. So I was listening to this on Friday, I was driving back from work. I have a long drive. Oh yeah, you want to play it? So, well, let me just set it up. It's Simon asked him about the difference between, like, getting people casual, kind of the things we were talking about, like making it easier for people, but also trying to keep it, competitive and this sort of thing. This is with ZRL or ZRL or Zwift Racing League, right? Which is lots more competitors. It's a Zwift event. It is not owned by WTRL. He clearly states that. And so go and listen to the podcast. You'll get all this background information. But the setup is he's talking about, Sai asked him a question about the casual or whatever, but also making it easier for people. So how do they do scanning of the data? So play the first one.
What I'll do is the clips are pretty short. I'll just play them twice so everyone can fully listen here.
Just play. You can play it once, and people.
I mean, we have access to the draft savings that a rider gets at that particular moment in time. We're quite fortunate who obviously we own with GPS, so we have a whole set of other APIs, very similar to the one Swift Power uses to do what it does. So we can see that the draft savings are far more substantial than someone who's knocked a couple of kilos off their weight.
Yeah, I understand. Of course.
So that's the watts per kilo, or excuse me, the height and weight sort of doping is what people would call it, but like people adjusting that. But in the whole podcast, Martin was talking about the pedaling style that Casey was just talking about. Is people don't do that. And other things about what Martin was saying is when you see that sort of thing, like they have algorithms and he kind of figures this things out and different things like that, where it's handled offline because he comes from rugby background. And if somebody gets a red card, they're going to be suspended for certain, they inform the team and then the player that themselves, which is where Brian is getting sort of like, he's being a little bit more public about it. But a lot of the times the person in question is probably requested and informed to kind of keep it as discreet as possible. So what do you guys think of that? Where it's like, hey, being able to analyze all the data to kind of know about it, and people having more information to then read about it, or should it pop up? Should it be more automated, or should it be on the onus on the rider?
You want me to play the second clip too as well?
Yeah, play the second clip, and then we'll touch on. We'll have another question.
Catching the people who are actively cheating. I strongly believe from everything that we've done over the last few years, people genuinely cheating is actually pretty low. I know there's a lot of discussions and conversations about whether people have set their weight correctly or their height correctly in the game and things like, or whether their weight hasn't changed for 6 months. I've done a lot of work and a lot of testing of my own thing. I can tell you now that the draft you pick up in a peloton is far more than you gain by dropping a few kilos on your weight. And height seems to have a bigger impact than a couple of kilos. For every inch in height you gain, taken off, you gain a lot more in terms of speed than you do for knocking a couple of kilos off, things like that. And
then, so just let me finish this up, is because it's taken out of context. What's his name? Chris asked a follow-up about, hey, what is the percentage of, they went into it because I think he also can see some numbers, and it's very low. It's like a percentage of like people that are doing weird things, and then it's like of the 1,000 riders and all that stuff. So it's a very low percentage. But the mentality is, and this goes back to even what Casey said maybe a couple of questions ago, is the mentality is people are immediately like, oh, cheating. And it's not. And that's the frustrating thing for me. It's like, it's not that it's just the mentality of that, oh, it's cheating because I'm losing or somebody's winning.
There's no way anybody's faster than me. If they beat me, they're cheating.
Correct.
Just move my height up.
What about in July and August when the new pack dynamics come out, and I inadvertently was doing these Evo races that were testing it. Every time I'd go for a breakaway, get out the front, all kind of people would be complaining in chat until I didn't know it was the test events, but I was off the front. Oh, you're an A, blah, 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 blah.
Like every race BK did.
Oh, yeah.
The latest pack dynamics.
Yeah.
Every single race, Brian would be like, oh, I'm going to go off the front. Oh, look at this cheater. Like every race. If you watch Brian's stream for a month and a half span, every race he did, he was being called out. Actually, you guys both got called out on another.
Eric's what is it? Don't get dropped cycling.
But
channel.
It just was the new pack dynamics.
It was just the new pack
allowed.
I forgot about that.
Right.
Yeah.
If you watch me in every RGT race that was on Tuesday night, I mean, we only had like 5 to 6 people, and I was eventually breaking away and riding away from people. That's just what I do. I tried to break away today, and I couldn't get away because it wasn't the pack dynamics. It was the pack was racing to keep it a sprint. And that's why I wasn't frustrated. I was like, I was doing my attack when I tried to attack at the beginning, blah, blah, blah. I was like, hey, they just didn't want to sprint. It wasn't, pack dynamics, which it used to be that. And that's the mentality that needs to change.
Yeah. I remember still not that long ago, the race where I had the A's yelling at me that I was sandbagging and cheating.
Right, yeah. Because you
Right, like I'm like,
the front group.
because they couldn't drop me, and it was a flat race. You had a couple rollers in it, and I was the only B that held on to the front group. And I had the A's ripping on me, and I'm like, I'm sorry you can't drop me, but I've averaged 3.3 watts per kilo. Like, I have a big matchbook. I have a big VO2 max. If you don't make me do an effort over 3 or 4 minutes, I will hang with everybody but an A plus. Like the A plus riders, they can drop me anytime. But what was a typical old school A, like, Brian, you and I, for example, right? You are a stronger rider than me, but you will have a hard time breaking me under 3 minutes unless you put me on the limit before that 3-minute effort. But if you let me ride at 3.2 watts per kilo, I can hang with you for 3 or 4 minutes. That's just the type of rider I am. And they were losing their mind because I was just like, okay. And then I kind of turn it into, I kind of troll them a little bit and be like, well, if you take me to the end, I can probably outsprint you too, because I know the game well enough that I can often outsprint good sprinters if I get the right jump on them.
Yeah. That's just playing the game. I've watched many of your streams where you've done that. And that's the thing, is if you can handle the Zwift start. And what's surprising and people call out is I'm on the 3rd chase group and we're doing the same watts per kilo as the front group. It's just that we couldn't stay with the front group. But if I could have stayed with the front group, I would be resting because they're doing like 2.8.
Yeah. That's what happened in the echelon race. Is it went super hard at the front. You rip everyone's legs off, and whoever can stay in the front, then it comes down to strategy. And it's just like, I mean, obviously I had a heart rate thing, but I probably wouldn't have hung. I would have been like chase group 3 or whatever. That's strategy. That's racing. Right?
Well, and what's funny is the whole concept of sandbagging, right? Sandbagging and good racing are the exact same skill. They're just called different things, right? A good racer is doing the absolute minimum amount of effort needed to stay with the group, to have a punch when it counts, right? And that's exactly what a sandbagger is trying to do too, is because of the way the categories were, right? They're trying to keep their power numbers as low as possible, right? As efficiently as possible, which is, this could start off a whole nother hour and a half of a podcast, right? This is why power-based categories are a bad idea, right? Because good racers end up being under-categorized, because I don't join a race. I mean, I join a race for a workout, but I don't join a race to go as hard as I possibly can for an hour. I join a race to win, right? And if winning is keeping my power low so I can sprint at the end, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not doing that to stay a B. I'm doing that to win the race. So, and you can't infer intent in that. So the whole sandbagger term just has to go away.
Unless you have
especially
an email.
now that all riding counts toward your category. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's almost impossible unless you only race on Zwift and ride on a different platform. That would be sandbagging, because you're only doing the least amount of effort for your category, but you do everything else on different platforms. So that could be, a version of it. But like you said, the other day we did a race. I think Dirty Pirate Man. I forget who else was in there. I was dying because I'm 5 kilograms heavier and I'm not the same fitness. I was dying. But when it comes to the last 2 kilometers, I got dropped and I had the lowest watts per kilogram out of the whole thing. I kind of chilled to the end, but still I would have been at the lower end of that. And I was dying hanging in the group. But that's the point of it, is I was drafting as much as possible, and because of that, my watts per kilogram ended up being lower. And that's the biggest thing. Technically, I was a C that day.
I think people have a lot of misconceptions with what racecraft is like you're not when you're in the group, you're not supposed to be burning matches all the time. It's when you decide to go off the front, or you decide to attack, or you decide to save it for the whatever, or make it hard on an incline or whatever. That's it. That's what raises your average. But if you can just chill and then sprint, then the average is there.
Is what gets funny about it is, and Brian and I are a similar level, and we race a lot together, so we have a lot in common on this with Marblehead and I. And if I intentionally went out and said, today I'm going to earn my A, I can't do it. I physically cannot do it, but I can join almost any mixed cat race and trigger somebody into screaming at me that I shouldn't be a B. And then this is the one that really gets me. Well, you can choose to join an A. And I'm like, okay, you're going to go tell the lightweight boxer he should choose to join the middleweight category? I earned the right to be a B, right? Like, that's where I belong. If you want to beat me as a B, you need to get better, right? Like, I'm not in the upper weight class, right? Like, like, you're not going to go tell a boxer, hey, you just keep destroying everybody in the lightweight class. You just need to categorize yourself up, right? Like, just you're too good, move up.
I did the first echelon race, and now instead of winning the first echelon race, filtered, whatever, from a breakaway, I have the benefit of being like 25th and 27th in the elite race.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from Zwift is the very first times a majority of these people race.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They haven't raced outside. They haven't done an outside crit. They haven't learned the racecraft. And so they do a Zwift race and they think this is how it is. And, like say sandbagging. That's when I was racing ZRL. I used to always, if I was in the top 10, I'd be like, look at everyone's watts per kilogram. And if I was lowest, I was like, haha, yes, I got those guys, like everyone else was like, in the C's, people would be like 3.1, 3.1, 3.1. I'd be like 2.6. And I'd be like fourth place. And I'm like, why? Because I sat in the pack and just didn't do anything. Like, quit going off the front for no reason, unless you're actually trying to make it stick.
I learned to race by watching Casey. You know what I mean? Like, watching him race and replicating that in my racing when I was first getting truly into it. That's how I learned. And like, I can't tell you how many races Casey and I have done together where we are the lowest out of that front group. We are the lowest. And there's so many people sitting on the front drilling it for what reason? Like, you aren't doing enough to get away. You're just making yourself tired to make it easier for us. Now, there are a lot of races that I'm like, okay, I'm going at this moment. I'm making it hard. I want to get off the front, do whatever. There's a lot of races I go into that way. But some of the bigger ones, I just know that I'm hanging out and I might try to get into a break if something happens. But that's the thing. Some people are just like banging their head off a wall in a group of 50 people. You're not going to get away unless there's something crazy that happens. But that's a lot of people just don't understand it.
And I think that's why we had a lot of that
break.
Yeah, we had a lot of that crazy pushback when the new pack dynamics came out. And I think that was from what you were saying, Lee, is a lot of people didn't know much of what racing was outside of Zwift. So all they knew of racing was, I can sit in this crazy fast pack. I don't have to worry about anyone breaking away from it, and I can prepare for a sprint at the end. And that's how we race, because that's how we've raced for 2 years. That's the only way I've ever raced. And the second that pack dynamic changed, and a lot of us that were a little more in tune with what that change meant, knew that as soon as that pack dynamics went across the board, that was an opportunity for us to really strategize and race. And man, those first 2 weeks when we would attack every single race and go off the front, those people that weren't paying attention to the changes and that had only ever raced on Zwift, those are the ones that just lost their mind, because they're like, this isn't racing. I'm like, no, this is racing. This is racing. If I go off the front, you might actually lose to me. Like, you are going to have to work to catch me. And then we go, oh, it's too hard. Like, no, this is real. This is how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, the new pack, the current situation where you can get away and stay away, and they have to actually do something to catch up to you. The other day, it just in the group ride, I was riding with my buddy, And I don't know how in the pen, he joined 2 minutes to go. He started 300 positions in front. So he must have joined and left and came back in. It took me an hour to track his stupid avatar down. In the group I'm in, I'm 8 seconds behind. I'm like, good, I can chill. No, this group just basically was doing 2.5 watts per kilogram, and his group was like averaging about 3.5. So I had to do a 4-minute effort to cross that to get to him, and it was painful. But that is, if I saw someone out on the bike trail or wherever, I'd have to do that to get up to them. You know, it wouldn't be just sit back in the pack almighty. So I love it because it's closer.
It's better. I want global physics. I want the height thing fixed. Is based on Martin Carew bringing up the height is a more disadvantage than weight. That has spawned new thoughts in my head. Like, because I've been saying that's my number one is global physics for me.
And that goes back to what I said earlier about like those outdoor skills that just don't translate. Because some of the tallest guys can be really great at TT as long as they get flat, right? Their position to the wind is still low. They get a nice flat back. They get down, nice packed in on the bike. They're super fast. They're usually heavier. They usually have higher raw watts. They just have to get aero. But you don't get that to translate to Zwift. So the height, the difference on Zwift is really, a lot of people don't understand how much that does actually impact.
I don't know how much it does, but I heard Martin Carew talk about it. I'm like, weight videos are not as important as height videos. And I can't change my height.
And the raw watts plays a lot. We're finding that a lot more in our team time trials that we do every Thursday now. It's not about finding a team that is consistent watts per kilo wise. If we can find a team that we're all polling at about the same wattage, if we all target 330 to 350 for our polls, and then we throw in a guy that might be 4.5 watts per kilo for an FTP, but he's down at like 250 for that FTP, like we absolutely destroy him in a team time trial because he just doesn't have the raw watts to hang with us.
Yeah.
Like the current world record 1 hour, Filippo Ganna, he's 1.93 meters, which is, decently over 6 feet tall. He'd be considered a tall cyclist. But
I'm 192.
So he's taller than you are.
Yes.
And he can put out some ridiculous power and he can get aero.
I was comparing my height, not my power.
Yeah, I had good power when I was doing outdoor time trials, but I didn't have anything ridiculous. My fastest state TT run, they were 40Ks. I averaged just over 28 miles an hour. That was only 328 watts for 52 minutes, 53 minutes, something like that. It was not some crazy number. Like go put Dr. Weebles on a TT bike. Like he's going to destroy that power number, but he's also got to be absolutely aero. Like I was unwaveringly aero on the TT bike. I only came out of aero to turn around. Like that was it. You never sat up. You never there were, and you would be amazed at how many people that I knew that I would go look and they had good quality power devices and they were in that same race. And I'd be like, oh, they held 10 watts more than me and they were 2 miles an hour slower. Right. And that was, that's the part that doesn't translate into indoors.
Yeah. In the early days of Indy Velo, when we were talking about physics, I discovered that I'm as aero as a school bus. So that's something that I actually need to work on because in game, I'm like, this is way too fast for my personal experience. Like, and I legit showed a flat paved, I think it was like a 12-mile effort. And I averaged 23.4 miles an hour at whatever it was, just say 300 watts or whatever it was. And like, I'm doing this at 250 in a game. I'm like, I don't experience this. And then like a slew of people are like, oh yeah, this, blah, blah, blah. And they showed files and I'm like, I'm the problem. It's not the game. I'm just not aero at all. So if I start riding outside more, that's something that I'm really going to have to get better at because
you have to work
you're
at
right.
It. Because I do time trials in my aero. I'm way more aero than I am in Zwift. and I know that for a fact. Do we have any questions from the audience? Because we've gone longer because we have a guest, but I do need to get out of here. So no questions, Lee? No questions from the audience. Any more final thoughts?
I think it was super awesome having Casey here. It's learned a lot.
Thank you, Casey.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have you come back on for more notes.
Yeah, more fun, right?
Exactly, more fun. Play the music. Thanks everyone for tuning in. On behalf of Casey Schumm, Lisa Vries, and Brian White.
CS Try X.
CS Try X. I don't know how you guys didn't get it right away, man. It's super easy to read. Lowercase, capital A's. So, all right. Thanks, everyone.